So I'm very happy to welcome Nissa to Canva Space. She is a software engineer here at Canva and an inclusive design expert. So over to you, Nissa.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And welcome to everybody today coming to us from all over the world. It's really exciting to see so much diversity happening here. Okay. So hello everyone and welcome to today's talk, and we are talking about inclusive design, designing for accessibility. In this workshop, we're going to outline some practical things that you can do in Canva to make your designs reach as wide an audience as possible. I'm presenting this workshop to you today from the middle of a locked down Sydney, which always was and always will be on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land and the elders past, present and emerging. And I would also like to extend that respect today to the traditional custodians of the lands of wherever you might be watching from today. So, hi, I am Nissa from Canva. I am the lead software engineer for the accessibility team. It's a very new team, and my work centers around trying to make Canva as usable and as useful for people who experience disability as it is for people who don't. So basically what we're trying to do is we're aiming to create the most accessible design tool on earth. So what is Canva? Please do let me know if you guys have used Canva before. Canva is a free tool, and you can visit canva.com and start designing without even signing up for an account. Today, I'm going to show you around our free product, but we do offer a monthly subscription to our pro version, and that gives you a lot more tools and stock images and lots of fancy things. We also offer premium versions for free for students and registered not-for-profits. So if you do fit into one of those categories, please do have a Google of that and go and sign up. We'd love to have you here. But it's not just all about the product. One of our core values is to empower the world to design. This is why Canva works in over 100 languages, and this is why we're investing in accessibility and inclusivity. So you can't empower the world to design if you don't empower absolutely everybody in it, and that's what today is about. Okay, so this is what our workshop today is going to look like. It's based around a few practical activities. So if you haven't already got Canva up in another window or tab, now is a really, really good time to do that. The structure of the presentation is divided into 3 main topics, and each is followed by a small practical where we use features to implement what we have learned in those presentations. The first topic is about design tips so that you can better include people with low vision or color blindness. Topic 2 is about design tips to include your audience who experience hearing loss. And to access Canva, just go to canva.com. And finally, we have a section on how to better include people who experience intellectual disability and light-sensitive seizures. I think it's really important to mention before I proceed that the design tips in each section will help a large quantity of people, but they do not cover all different types of medical conditions and situations. I would really, really love one day to be able to give you instructions on how to create one design that would include absolutely everybody, regardless of their situation. But the human body is amazingly complex, and as a result, so is disability. It's also likely that some of the strategies today will make things worse for some individuals, but better for many others simultaneously because of how complex the human body is. Everyone's situation is different, and it's a really good idea to connect with your own audiences to find out if they have special needs and what they are, and find out. Having said that, the tips in each topic will help your designs reach a larger audience than they otherwise might have done before you came to this session. So before we start talking about disability, we should probably define it just a little bit. The definition has changed a lot over time, and it often has different connotations for different people depending on their background. I'd love to hear from all of you in the chat right now what you might define disability as. And to answer your question, Charles, no, you do not need to sign up to access it. Absolutely.
Dave says lack of one or more sense.
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll be kind to you. What I will do is I will give you an answer. So I don't want to get too political here because this can get very political and contentious. This is the UN's definition of disability from the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now, in my opinion, this definition is a little bit too limited, but it does touch on a concept I'd really like to highlight. So I'm just going to read this out for you now. And it's a long sentence too. Disability is a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment which in interaction with various barriers may hinder a person's full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. Again, I feel that that's quite limited. The barriers are in how society is designed. So, for example, a person who uses a wheelchair can experience equal access and participation in places where there's a ramp. But if society chooses to only build stairs, then you've got a barrier. Today's workshop is about the often forgotten barriers in visual design, which can easily be remedied. So this is and part of a nifty image. The image is actually a lot bigger than this, that I really like about categorizing disability. And yes, shout out to social model of disability. This particular category is touch, but you can extend it through to vision or hearing or smell. It doesn't really matter, any particular sense. The reason I really like this image is because it includes disability which isn't about something medical like Jess was talking about earlier, so something that's situational. If you need two hands to operate something, like maybe a car, and you are holding a baby, please don't do that. The barrier is just as real as a person trying to do it with a broken hand. A situational visual disability might include something like trying to view an image on your phone when the sunlight in the background is way too bright. I do that all the time. For hearing, it could be that you're in a situation like you're on the train and you've forgotten your headphones and you can't turn on the sound on a video because it would be really very rude. So those are a couple of different situational examples of things that we should be looking out for. A hugely important part of inclusive design, though, is that by reducing the barriers for someone with a permanent disability, you are also likely reducing the barriers for people experiencing situational disability. So you're winning far more people than you otherwise might expect from your accessible design choices. A really great real world example of this is the curb ramps on the streets. Again, that's a bit location dependent. It was designed for people who use wheelchairs so that they can get off the pathway onto the street and back up on the pathway again. But if you've ever pushed a pram around, you'll know that that has benefited you an awful lot as well. So we're going to have a teensy-meatsy pop quiz about disability now that we've defined it. I'm going to admit the following numbers do not include situational disability, which is probably impossible to measure. So let's go for question number 1. Put your answers in the chat, please. And on a system, please do not Google these. This is going to be a bit of an easy one. How many people in the world today live with disability? Let's get some guesses going. A lot. Yes, that is correct. 1 in 5. Okay. We've got a couple of votes for 1 in 5, 15 to 20%, 1 in 10, 30%. Interesting. We've got some 20 million in Mexico. Oh, that sounds like you actually know what's going on there. 15%. Oh, we got 1 in 100. No, I'm afraid it's definitely not 1 in 100. The actual answer is 1 billion or 15%. And yes, there are 500,000 registered with the NDIS in Australia, but the NDIS does not include 89% of disability in Australia. So the answer to this question is 1 billion or 15%. Now, this was calculated 10 years ago, though. So this number is only expected to have increased as life expectancy gets longer on average, and there's been a dramatic increase worldwide of chronic health conditions like diabetes and heart disease. You get disability coming along with those. These numbers also get much higher for many different groups of people, especially people in lower income areas and already marginalised groups. For example, Indigenous Australians are 1.8 times as likely to live with disability compared to non-Indigenous Australians. Here's another one for you. This one's a little bit tricky. What percentage of your life can you expect to live with a disability if you live in a country with a life expectancy of over 70? So I'd like to apologize firstly to anybody who experiences color blindness. This was unfortunately the best version of the map that I could get. But basically the countries which have a life expectancy of over 70 are almost all of North America, almost all of South America. You got Middle East, Western Europe, Northern Africa, a lot of Asia, and Australia and New Zealand are definitely in there. Yeah, 20 years, 40%, 10%. I've got some guesses going. 30, interesting. You can expect to live 11.5% of your life with a disability, and that is about 8 years. That's a lot. So this is, again, only in countries with an average life expectancy of over 70. Importantly, the older that you get, the more likely you are to live with disabilities. So, for example, Australian numbers, because that's what I have the most access to, I'm afraid, about 85% of over 90-year-olds experience disability. As soon as we start talking about around 60 years old, it's about 25%. This one I won't quiz you on because it's actually quite difficult. So how common are different types of disability? So these statistics are hard to nail down for various reasons, so just sit back and absorb these numbers. For hearing loss, around 17% of Australians in 2006 were affected by hearing loss. The projections for 2050 indicate that this will be 1 in 4 people. That's a lot of people. And if you're keen on looking at the source, we've got the bit.ly link up in the top left corner with a QR code. Okay. Full or partial blindness. In Australia, there are currently 357,000 people who have full or partial blindness. This is only 1.4% of Australians, but it doesn't actually include people with a lot of different chronic vision issues. If we're talking about chronic vision issues, it's 52% of Australia. So this includes all of the people who experience partial and full blindness like before. But if you are long or short-sighted, hello. If you are colorblind, if you have astigmatisms, also hello. Cataracts, these are all covered by this number. So more than half of Australians, you are more likely to run into somebody on the street with a chronic vision issue than you are not. And as a bit of a Sydney lockdown special slide, I felt like I should probably include this one. 45% of Australians aged 16 to 85 experience a mental health condition during their lifetime. I can only imagine that the global pandemic has very much not helped this number. And I would really like to just remind everybody to take care of yourselves and take time to do that and take care of everyone around you the best that you can. But firstly, yourself, that's the important one. So the takeaways from what we've just talked about, these are the things that I really want you to walk away from with this, because the numbers I know probably won't stick. Disability is a wide array of different issues and different severities. It's a spectrum. It's a huge spectrum. Living with disability is in most of our futures or present. The amount of people living with disability is expected to increase. Yeah, so that leads us to our first topic. And this one underpins our next couple of topics as well. So it's super important. And it's also really important because Canva is obviously a visual communication tool primarily. So the first thing I would like to do is to remind everybody again, just in case you missed it, that the following strategies do not help everyone with all different vision-related disability types. Unfortunately, because eyes are very complex, different people need different things, but the strategies generally will work for people with chronic eye conditions. Okay, so here are the Precious 5 guidelines. This is me. These will help improve the readability of any of your designs, but you'll notice a couple of these pop up in general design recommendations as well. But these will help people distinguish your text content more easily and for different reasons. Firstly, bigger and bolder is better. Larger text is more noticeable, and this one is why you frequently see billboards or advertisements with only a few words. But for people with reduced vision, it's especially important. Make the most important statement in your work, the thing that you need your audience to know immediately. Use the most real estate in your designs. And I'll show you an example of this in another slide. Heavier font faces, so your bold, thick, and chunky fonts, are also easier to discern from anything in your background. So that's what you want to go for. Sans serif font faces are frequently easier to read than serif font faces. This can be a little contentious, and you'll need to use your best judgment here. On one hand, serif fonts will have more going on, which can clutter up your text and content, but on the other, it can be very useful to prevent confusion between different similar looking letters. Again, I'll provide some examples in a minute. Fewer different fonts are better. This is a common piece of advice in design, and it can definitely help to make your work look more professional, but it also helps to reduce clutter. For each new font someone has to try to read, they have to put in the mental work of understanding what that font is doing and communicating. The less you need to make your audience work for your message, the more likely they are to receive the message that you're intending to communicate. Use decorative fonts sparingly. This one follows on from fewer different fonts guideline. There are a lot of really beautiful fonts out there which are very, very fancy and complicated, and so they require more time for people to understand what is going on. If you really want to use a complicated and fancy font, make sure that you only do it for tiny little bits of text like titles. Using decorative fonts for entire paragraphs of text is sure to make many people, regardless of how good their eyesight is, stop reading entirely. And lastly, and again, this isn't a deal breaker in its own right, but if you have the choice to do it, I recommend it. Fonts with more space and breathing room require less work from the audience to read it. It can be really tempting to use a skinny font so that you can get all the content you want into a tiny little space, but that's actually a sign that you need to reduce the amount of content and increase the amount of space. Which one of these is your eye drawn to? Place your answers in the chat. I would love to know. One. Ooh, a 3. 1. I think we've got a little bit of a consensus here, though, that it might be the first one. And for me, it is also the first one. The other two are still nice. They still convey the same message. But the focus of the middle picture, the first thing that my eye is drawn to is the dog's eye. The last one is also pretty good. The focus competes a little bit between the eye and adopt, don't shop. If you close your eyes and open them back up again, the first thing that will end up drawing your eye is probably the very thick white text on the left. This is down to the size of the text and also the heaviness of the font face. So it contrasts a lot more with the background. And yes, the dog is sad, and I do believe in adopt, don't shop, which is why this picture is up there. Okay, so for the person who asked what is sans serif and what is serif, this slide is for you. So serif are the fonts that have all the little tails and little baubles and all the little extra bits on the letters. Sans serif, it doesn't have any of that. It's just as much as is necessary to communicate just the letter form. Serifs are actually stylistic remnants from when the Romans used to carve letters into stone. It's how they made the lines all neat and line up and square. Obviously, today we are not carving in stone usually. So for most texts, sans serif is, it's a little bit easier to read. At least that's what the studies usually say. So here, on the right-hand side here is a template that I have chosen from our library. The image on the left, I have just, yes, you're right, the newspaper does use serif font, and that is largely historical, but there is also studies which show for large blocks of text, if there's no other competing elements, that a serif is fine. The image on the right, again, like I said, is from a template library. The image on the left, I have just changed the typography so that it's using sans serif fonts. Both look nice enough, but it's generally quicker and easier for most people to read the text on the left one. The consistency and the line weight is definitely part of this. So if you look at the A here, you've got a very skinny left line and a very skinny, very thick right line. And it makes it just a little bit more work to try and figure out what is going on there. But serif, there can be a little bit of complication. This is why this can be a bit contentious. And this is something I really want to point out. Sans serif fonts are more likely to suffer from an issue that affects a great deal of fonts, serif or sans serif alike. Some of the letters might not be easy to distinguish. So, for example, here I've written the same text in 3 different font faces, and that text is 10, capital I, capital O, lowercase l. This is Montserrat, which is the sans serif one. It's nearly impossible to tell the difference between the lowercase l and the capital I. Even in the serif font, though, Neue Montreal, you can see not much difference between the lowercase l and the 1. And if either of those letters or numbers were in isolation, you could easily mistake them. So here's a font that is very, very clear about it because it was developed specifically to do so. Your 0 has a dot in it to make sure you can tell it from the O. The I has a top and a bottom. The L has a little bit on the left, and the 1 has that diagonal, just to disambiguate it. So it's very important to, judge this for yourself and use a little bit of discretion. Especially if you are not using common regular words or just only tiny bits of text. If you're using short words that aren't common, it can be the difference between someone typing in your correct business name or URL into Google or going somewhere else entirely. This is especially an issue for people who live with dyslexia. Fewer different fonts is generally better. So some of us are old enough to remember a time when word art and text processing was a pretty new thing. We'd send out and receive party invitations with a whole lot of different styles and colors and shapes, and it was just because we could. However, can really increase the amount of cognitive load for people who are just trying to understand what you've written. So what I've done here is I've tweaked this template from our library a little. The one on the left is closer to the original. I've just tweaked this bottom one here. It uses 5 different font faces and weights. But the one on the right, which I've changed, only uses 1 font face and 1 weight. So the stylistic differences that you are getting from here, like this text looks different to this text. I'm using sentence case. This is all capitals. The letter spacing has changed a little bit. So you can still have the variation and aesthetic interest, but it's a little bit easier for people to understand each line because they don't have to work as hard to understand the different fonts. Use different fonts, decorative fonts sparingly. Some fonts are made to be read and comprehended, and some are just made to look fancy and fabulous. And these are decorative fonts. It can be really, really tempting to try to add that fabulous to just about everything in your design, but please, please resist. This template from our library on the left uses a few different fonts, contrary to my previous point, I know. The image on the right, though, only uses the 1 font for everything, but that choice makes it unreadable in parts, especially this email address on the bottom. So be careful not to make everything fancy. You might be compromising your message in the process. Yes, it is hectic, which is why you need to be very careful with decorative fonts. Go spaced and go wide. This one is especially important if you expect your design to be viewed from a distance. So you might be making a billboard or a poster that's going in real life, or maybe a presentation. If you're like me, if you've ever looked at a movie poster, they'll always have this bottom bit where everybody's name that's worked on it is made in this really, really compressed thin text because they're trying to fit all of the information on the poster. But it's very difficult to read. So when people are better able to distinguish where one letter starts and one letter ends, so, and where one word starts and ends or phrase, they're going to have an easier time reading what you've written and therefore understanding it. So this is another template from our library. I've tweaked it though. So this is using Palala Bus Wide. for the text. And you can see that this one is a little bit easier to read on first glance. The one on the right is the condensed version of the same font face. And I am not a fan personally. So remember, if you are tempted to reduce the width of your letters to try and squeeze more information in, you're probably trying to do too much in too little space. Okay, this is color contrast, and this one is the one I see most frequently forgotten in design, no matter how professional it is, and it's my personal pet peeve. Text with a higher contrast to its background is easier to read. And the fancy ratio that you want to aim for is 4.5 to 1. And I'll show you how to find this ratio in a minute. I'm not going to get into the science behind it because it really is a lot and it's very complicated. What you do need to know, though, is that 4.5 to 1 is the ratio where the average 80-year-old will start to struggle to read. So if you want to sell your product to somebody who is over 80 years old, and I'm sure most products, you want to sell them to, you're going to want to think about this ratio. So a higher contrast ratio than 4.5 to 1 is almost always better. 7 to 1 is fabulous. Please go ahead. You can go even higher. Just don't go lower than 4.5. Many people also use lower contrast ratios to do sneaky things. So hiding disclaimers and contractual fine print, you will see that a fair bit. So be very, very careful. The rule is, if you intend for someone to read it, it needs to be readable. So here is an example for color contrast. The image on the left is a little bit tweaked from a template that I found in our library. No, I don't know why it says disc instead of discount. The image on the right, I have only changed the color of that title. The left image starts off okay, so I can see disc pretty well, but as soon as I get to the word off, it becomes really very difficult to read. The reason the title on the right is so much easier to read and understand at first glance is because the text has a higher contrast ratio to the background. There are other ways you can boost the contrast of your text too. So for example, Canva, we have some text effects. So shadowing and lift and hollow tools, which can allow you to create some extra contrast around the edges of your letters and boost it if you can't change the colors a little bit, So this is a link to my favorite tool, and I'd love for you guys to open it up in another tab. You can follow the link or the QR code, and our wonderful Jessica will put the link in the Zoom chat for me as well. This will take you to my personal favorite color contrast checker, and it's by WebAIM. So the reason I like this one so much is because, as an engineer, it's been engineered to be accessible to people who use screen readers or other assistive technologies. But there are a lot of color contrast checkers on the web. You can absolutely find, your own. Another thing that you might want to do to check your designs is see how easily they can be understood by people with different kinds of color blindness. So color blindness predominantly affects men, and it's much more common amongst Caucasian people than any other group. It's estimated that around 10% of Scandinavian men, for example, live with color blindness. That's the biggest proportion on Earth. There are different types of color blindness, though, and some are more common than others. This is a tool example showing how you can check your image for color blindness with the link that we're going to provide. So it's called COBLIS, which stands for Color Blindness Simulator. It provides a pretty easy interface for you to upload an image and check out how it looks. It's only an approximation of what people with color blindness experience, because this is not really an exact science. But one of the important things to know is that red-green color blindness is the most common. So if you're going to check for any one type, your design's against that, check for those. But ideally, in the most ideal circumstances, you will have chosen colors which are still easy to distinguish for anyone with any kind of color vision. I'll demonstrate in a little bit using this tool to check, but you can use this download function in your own designs to export whatever you create and upload it to this and, find out what your designs look like. So we will be doing that in this activity. So what I'd love for you all to do now, but you don't have to do it. This is being recorded, so you can do this later if you so wish. But what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes using what we've covered in the previous slides to create an Instagram post for your new fictional bakery. I don't know why it's a bakery. I just like bread or other kind of business. You don't have to do a bakery. We're only going to make a simple non-moving image Instagram post alongside it with a little bit of text, making sure that you consider how readable each piece of text needs to be and weighing that up against which piece of text might just be more for flavor. It might be the name of your bakery. It might be telling us about a daily special or a discount, whatever you would like to do. So here are the tips, and just for a mini refresher, and the links again for the color blindness simulator and the color contrast checker. Bigger and bolder is better. Sans serif is easier. Fewer different fonts are better. Use decorative fonts sparingly, go spaced and go wide. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate live because I am crazy. And if you prefer, you can go and do that. And we're going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes just getting used to this and having a look at that. So I'm just going to swipe over. So I am going to create a new design. And as I can see, I've already got an Instagram post template there for me. Wonderful. So I actually already know which one I would like to use, and that is this one over here. Yes, I was practicing earlier. So look, it's a perfectly nice design, but I think we can improve the readability of this text. It's already doing a couple of things. It's using a very wide font, so that's already a good point for it. It doesn't have any decorative fancy fonts, which is good. It's only got, if we have a look here, daily motivation, that's a Grandia wide medium. I'm fueled by happy thoughts and coffee, true. That's also a Grandia wide medium. And the last one is a Grandia wide medium as well. So we've satisfied the fewer different fonts are better idea. And it's all sans serif. So all of those are a tick. And it's, I think though that we could probably make some of this a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to make that 36 just to boost it up a little bit, move it up. And, you know, if I'm quoting a site that I really want everybody to go to, I probably want that to be a bit bigger as well. So one of the other things that I think I need to do here though is I am not confident that that color of this text is a good color choice for this background. I don't think it has enough contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that piece of text and I'm going to go up to the text color box, which you can see just up there. I'm going to click on that and it opens up this contextual panel over here. As you can see, this burnt dark red here is highlighted, and that's the current color of the text. And the tooltip on that, it's a little bit difficult to read. It says 993817. And what that is it's a hex code. So it's one of the ways in computer world that we describe and define colors. So I could try and memorize that, but I don't really want to memorize things. So now that this has been selected, I'm going to go to the add a new color box where it has already been pre-filled for me. So anytime you select an element and you go to the new color box over here, you'll find that that color code is in there already for you. And I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to move to the color contrast checker. Just going to refresh that so we get a nice clean one. Okay. So this is what it looks like by default. And it's a little bit complicated, but it's not too bad. What we have here is this is for the foreground color. So this is where I'm going to put my text color. And I'm just going to paste that. And if I click outside it, you can see it's changed to the color of the text. And this will be for the background color, which I'll get in a second. And here is the important part, the contrast ratio. So this one right now, if the background were white, it would contrast 7.16 to 1. You've got some other complicated stuff down here. You don't really need to think too much about that if you know about the 4.5 to 1 rule. If you don't remember the 4.5 to 1 rule, just look for the DubCag AA normal text. And that happens, I happen to know that's 4.5 to 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my design. And yes, there will be a recording later. And I'm going to click on my background. And as you can see up here, there's the orange, and that's where I can change the color of my background. It's already highlighted for me. And it says CF8B3F. But if I click the add new color box, it's already there and highlighted for me. So I'm just going to copy that, go back to my contrast checker, put it in as the background color. And there we go. And that's what we've got. So that's our current text color on our current background color. But the contrast ratio is only 2.52 to 1. That is obviously less than 4.5 to 1. So we are going to need to do something to try and boost this color contrast to really make it readable. And what I'm going to do is I think I am going to make the background lighter. Okay, so I've gone over the 4.5 to 1 now. It's 4.84. You could do better than that, but let's just, for the sake of argument, stop here. So I'm going to copy that background color now that I have now changed. Go back to my post, click that orange background, bring up the contextual panel, add a new color, and paste that new value in. And as you can see, the background has changed color. So the contrast of my "a really great site" text is now way better on the background. Unfortunately, that has made the contrast for the main text, "I am fueled by happy thoughts and coffee," that's now poorly contrasted. So I'm just going to repeat this again. I'm going to click on that text and go to the text color. It's already highlighted. I can see it's FFE ACF. I'm going to click the add a new color button, copy the value, go to the contrast checker and place it in my foreground color. And as you can see, the contrast of that text on the background is only 1.26 to 1. So we need to do something, and I am just going to reduce the lightness of that color. So it's a much darker color. If I wanted to, I could also just press this color here. But this we'll leave aside for now how pretty the color combination is, but I've got a much higher contrast ratio, and that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to copy this value. I'm going to go back to, and it's already highlighted and already there, and I'm just going to paste it. Oops. There we go. Oops. I've actually copied the text. That's not what I wanted. Make sure the text is selected, go to text color, add a new color, paste. There we go. So I don't love this color combination, but this is just a bit of an example for how to do it. The other thing that I mentioned before was checking this against color blindness as well. So let's assume that I was happy with how this looked. What I can do now is I can download this as a PNG or a JPEG. That either one is fine. I'm just going to download that the way it is now. And as you can see down the bottom right, it's downloading for me. And I know it is downloaded. Thank you. And I would like to save it. Thank you. Okay. And now I'm going to go to my color blindness simulator, where I've actually already uploaded this one, but you can click the browse button here to find the file on your computer that you've just saved. So this is what it looks like to people with normal vision. I don't really love the word normal, but the average vision. Now, if we have a look at the different types of color blindness, red, weak, proto-anomaly, you can see that it's still readable. That's good. Green, blue, red. Because we made the color contrast decent and the colors themselves work in this particular case, even if the person does not have any kind of color vision, which does happen, it's pretty rare, then you can see that this is still going to be mostly okay for them. If you click on red weak, green weak, or red blind or green blind, and you see that it's difficult for you to read the text, then you might want to consider changing your colors to something else. Yeah. So I am going to give you a few minutes to to try that one out yourself with Canva, if you so like, also because I would really like a sip of water. Okay, so there are your guidelines again, and have a crack.
Great. And when you've had that sip of water, Nissa, I've got a couple of questions for you. So let me know.
Absolutely. Okay. I can listen and drink at the same time. So
okay. She is multi-talented, everybody. So Charles just had a quick question about the color blindness simulator. When using a specific color and it doesn't contrast, Charles is asking if you actually use that tool to improve the visual or just give you insights into what you need to change. I don't think the tool actually changes the design for you, does it?
No, this is just so you can see what it might look like to people with different kinds of color blindness. Unfortunately, I would love to put a way to do this in Canva, but it won't change the colors for you. You will need to go back to your post and do that work again and check the color contrast and then check to see that it makes sense. I can't remember which specific colors are the best for as a kind of guarantee. You'll have to Google that one yourself, I'm afraid.
Follows on to another question from Andrea. What do you think are the main font colors that are the most comfortable for visually impaired, even partial sighted people to read? Is it just a matter of that high contrast, or are there preferred colors?
Okay, so if you go to the tool, now the tool uses actually a very simplified way of working out the contrast ratio. And so this tool will always give you the highest contrast ratio with white on black. But the algorithm it uses is just there to be an approximation. If you actually want the highest contrasting colors, I believe it's actually yellow, very light yellow and a very dark blue that will give you the most contrast, because humans, we have a perceptual color system rather than whatever this algorithm is. It can be a good idea to not go as high a contrast as is possible, because that can actually get a bit painful for people with average vision. And I have actually run into at least one person where they experience difficulty reading white on purple. So you've got different conditions which will affect different people differently. So just go for something that's above 4.5, maybe closer to 10, and you're probably going to be golden.
Beautiful. Thank you. And one quick question before we get back to it. An anonymous person asks, do you have any advice for people who might be working with brand colors that don't contrast well? Ooh. Is it a case of education here and really going and maybe evaluating the brand colors, or do you have any kind of workaround advice?
This is something that Canva has actually dealt with as well, and Twitter. Look, I come from a perspective where more accessible is better, and that is always what I will argue for. But I appreciate that there are a lot of designers out there, and a lot of really beautiful color combinations that aren't really contrast heavy. You can go and start trying to change the brand colors. That is going to be a very difficult fight for you, I'm afraid. But often the brand colors are something that you can use to highlight and emphasize things instead. So, for example, if I go to the Canva homepage, you can see that our logo has white on this kind of teal. And it used to be that, all of our buttons had that white on teal as well, but they didn't need to be. So what we've done is we've changed our user interface elements to have this higher contrast color combination, but our Canva teal color is still used to decorate and emphasize specific bits. So if you can't change your brand color, pick a color that goes with it that does have that contrast and use it for your body text and all of your important elements.
Fantastic tip. Thank you very much. And that's it for questions at the moment.
Oh. Yes, secondary colors are complementing. Definitely an option. I'm just going to close that down and go back to my thing. Okay, so we are now on to topic 2. Topic 1 was a big one because, like I said, it underpins everything else that I'm going to talk about, really. So this will be a small section on how to include people who are experiencing hearing loss of some kind. So the internet has increasingly become more and more about video content. And as that's happened, we've needed to start thinking more and more about how to deal with audio on top of either static images or on top of animated ones. So here are my top tips for that. Captions and transcripts, which I will go into in a minute. It's important that you don't just limit yourself to the visual. And this doesn't just benefit people who are deaf. We've all been in a situation where we can't or just don't want to, for some reason, turn on the sound for whatever we're watching on our phones, and captions and transcripts benefit you here too. So transcripts help your content to be more computer understandable as well. And that's really important if you want your content to be found on search engines like Google. It needs to be machine understandable and human understandable if you want to rank. Another fantastic benefit of providing text alongside your visual content is that research shows that it benefits comprehension, especially if you are speaking like me in what might be an unfamiliar accent to your ears, or maybe English is not your audience's first language. It'll really help those people out too. Even for native speakers, though, captions can even benefit memory. So your audience is more likely to remember your message if you reinforce it through text as well as audio, as well as something else. The second tip is related to captions. It's about positioning and ownership. So putting down captions or a transcript is good, but it's also good that you think about how understandable that is. Putting thought into where it is on the screen and how you differentiate sources of information can make all the difference in people's comprehension of your message. And the last tip is actually all of the tips from the first topic. So everything we discussed in topic 1 absolutely applies here too. There are many people out there who experience disability in ways which affect multiple senses. So it's all very well to put in a transcript or captions, but if you don't follow the guides on color contrast and text legibility that we talked about earlier, you'll still be excluding people. So for best effect, it's good to use these concepts with your transcripts and captions. Okay. So I'm just going to get into a couple of definitions again. Transcripts are the full text of audio which sits separately but alongside some video or audio. And I'll show you an example in a minute. Captions are the text that you will see on top of a video. They are frequently referred to as subtitles, but subtitles are for when content is being translated from another language and it assumes that you can actually hear the audio at the same time. Captions, though, are just the text version in the same language as the content. Both captions and transcripts together are a fantastic combination. And if you have the opportunity to provide both, I really recommend it. Here's an example of a transcript. So there's a link down the bottom, and this is just where the transcript belongs. It's for one of our fantastic Canva Design School articles. So it sits alongside a video underneath it, but this one is pretty straightforward as well. So it says, "Hi, I'm Kat, welcome to Canva Design School." That's because we only really have one speaker there. So it's a pretty simple, just bit of text that you can plonk on a web page. This is captions. This is the same video for what the transcript was referring to. So it's the same link as well. You can see, though, that it's got these auto-generated YouTube captions on top of the video. So you can choose to do that instead of sitting there and reading through the transcript, but it's not as computer accessible. We're very lucky now that social media companies are generating captions for us in videos, but relying on them can lead to some interesting mistakes. They're not yet at a level where they can account for all accents and words. So if you do enable auto-generated captions on any media that you're providing on social media, it's really good to double check that they're not something a little bit off topic. And I will be very interested to see what the auto-generated transcript for this presentation will be when it gets uploaded. Another thing that auto-generated captions don't do well yet is that you can't tell necessarily who is talking if there's more than one person speaking at a time. Positioning and ownership. So if you are creating captions, here are some things which are really great to keep in mind. Use different styles to show who is speaking. Obviously, don't go over the top with this. We don't want your crazy word art, but simple color choices can really help distinguish different speakers, or even just one speaker with text that sits alongside. So if you're watching the news, there will be somebody reporting on a topic, but it might say their name and who they are underneath. So you can at least differentiate between those two bits of text as well. Be careful, very careful of your caption location. This one is really hugely important because video components like timelines or auto-generated captions and subtitles might end up covering up your important text. Even if you're showing it live, if your text is too bottom of the screen, and I've experienced this multiple times in real life, I was watching a presentation, it was a super large room, I was sitting behind tall people. If all of their heads were covering up the captions and I couldn't hear the video properly, so the captions were just rendered useless. And I'm going to be very, very sneaky here. And I'm going to introduce another text guideline, which really could have been in topic 1. Try to keep your text bigger than 24 point. Now, Canva uses, I believe, point by default. People who have vision impairments will really benefit from this. But it's also possible that people without vision impairments will benefit because frequently your video might be displayed smaller than you expect. So it'd be a bit of a waste to caption your video and take that time if it ends up being too small to read. Unfortunately, different fonts interpret their size of 24 points very differently. So you're going to have to use a little bit of judgment again. We probably could use some international standardization on font sizing, but that's a dream. Okay, so here's ownership. So this is an example. It's the same text on both sides, but changing the colors can help distinguish who is who. This is a video that I found in the Canva library, and I completely made up the dialogue. I couldn't hear anything with it, so I've just made up the text. This is not what they're actually saying. If we play the example on the left, both people are being represented by the black text on white. Now, if, for example, the reading order needs to change of the text just because of perhaps timing, it's going to be difficult to keep up with who is saying what. Now, so what I've done is on the right is I've associated a color with a speaker, and I've taken a measure for people who might not be able to see color. What I have done is I have made the text for one person white and the text for one person black. So even if you can't see color, you will be able to figure out who is speaking just that little bit better. So let's have a look at that. The thing about captions is if there are multiple speakers, it can be tricky. So that's an example of just how to associate text with a person. Now, I have gone for two very different colors here. You don't even have to do that. Even if this were yellow and black, so black text on yellow, this could be yellow text on black, and it would still have that difference. This particular one might be tricky for someone with certain types of color blindness. Again, I highly recommend putting it through the tool and trying it out. But the reason this one would be okay, even despite color blindness, is because one speaker has white text on a dark background and the other speaker has dark text on a light background. I've managed to differentiate it that way too. So this is an example of position, which I encountered when actually making the previous video. So as you can see, these are just screenshots. These are not the same video. On the left, I have taken a screenshot of the video, and the timeline for the video and the Chrome and all the controls are covering up what it says. On the right-hand side, the same information is just shifted up just that little bit slightly. So all of the controls are now easily distinguished. And if YouTube, for example, puts some automated captions or translation over the top, you'll still get the text there for the English speakers. Now, if you had a larger amount of space and even more speakers than you got in this video, You could position the captions a little bit closer to whoever is speaking at the time. That's another way of associating a person with text, but the bottom of the screen is pretty ingrained culturally for captions and subtitles, just historically. And it's a good idea to generally keep them there so that we don't have to, look all over the screen for whoever's speaking like we're watching some kind of ping pong match. Okay, so you can make captions in Canva, and I will be showing you how to do it, but it is a little bit tricky. So the next demonstration will be a little bit on the trickier side. We are working on better ways of doing this. Please stay tuned. I wish I could give you spoilers. It's going to be great. But for activity 2, we're back to the bakery. I still love bread. What we are going to do is create a new design for your bakery. And this one's going to be a video for Instagram. And I am not endorsing Instagram specifically. This is just one of the standard use cases we get for people making stuff at Canva. So in the Canva library, we surprisingly have a fair amount of different videos for bread. So don't feel like you need to caption an actual conversation like I did on the previous videos. But what I'd like you to do in your own time, or just watching the demonstration here, is split up a short video into 2 or 3 different segments that still flow, and add some captions or text with accessibility in mind to describe what the viewer can't see. So perhaps you want to, communicate to a potential audience how good the bread smells, or the atmosphere of your bakery, or just the directions on how to get to your bakery. It doesn't really matter. One thing you also want to keep in mind is that if you've got a large bit of text, you are going to want to leave it on the screen for a longer time, because people won't want to feel rushed reading it, and that can get really, really difficult. Okay, so I am going to demonstrate that for you now. If you like, you can have a go at it yourself at the same time, or you can just watch and come back to the video later and we can, yeah. So here I go. And here I am. I'm back on my Canva homepage, and I'm going to create a design. And Instagram, yeah, I'm going to create a Reels video, because why not? We've got all these different templates. I'm just going to wait for that to load a little bit. So we have a lot of different videos, and in this particular case, you can't see the videos tab. So if you head down to more in the object panel, the videos button should, I've already put it in there. So videos might turn up in here, but I've already got it in my object panel over here. So we've got a lot of really gorgeous, stunning videos. But like I said, we are going for bakery related ones. And I already happen to have used this toast one previously. It's not the right aspect ratio for this template format, but it still works pretty well. So I have just dragged that video into my design. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to add some text to this video for whatever our captions might be. So if I go to text on the left-hand side, I'm going to add a heading. Added a heading. I'm going to move it down here. And this is a video about toast. I'm just going to say this is about toast, just to keep it simple for myself. So the text here in this particular case already contrasts pretty well with the background, but videos obviously move. So it's a little bit unpredictable. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to elements on the left-hand side, and I'm going to search for rectangle. And what this is going to do for us is it's going to come up with a bunch of rectangles, which I'm just going to place onto my canvas, drag and drop. It's chosen a color for me there, which I'm not very happy with. So I'm going to choose a different color. I'm going to go for this purple, because I actually really like that color, which is why it's my background. And so I am going to move that. And it's already behind my text, which is nice. But if it's not, you can use the position button here to bring it forward and backwards. So I have put it behind my text. And it doesn't need to take up this much space. You can make it a lot smaller than that. just so it gives a background for your text. Obviously, the contrast on that is terrible. So I am going to change the color of my text to white. So this is our video. So if I just demonstrate this for you, you can see it's 8.4 seconds long. This is the little play preview button here. And I'm previewing it now. And it's an 8-second video that just says, this is about toast. So I want the text to update because obviously it's captions. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to right click on the first slide and I'm going to tell it to duplicate. And now we've got two exactly the same slides. And as you can see, the time has gone up to 16.8 seconds, but we don't want to duplicate all of the video. We don't want to watch captions on one video all the way through and then it changes. That's not how that works. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm on slide 1. I am going to click the background, the video, which as you can see there. And if I go up to this toolbar, you can see that it says 8.4 seconds with a little scissors icon next to it. I'm going to click on that and it brings up this timeline and it starts playing for me automatically. So I'm just going to pause that because I don't need it to do that. And what I'm going to do is that is the entire length of the video. I don't want the entire length of the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this purple bar at the very end. And as you can see, the tooltip is updating on the bottom and it shows me what seconds I'm up to. And I'm going to drag that to 3.9. And I'm going to drag it as close as I can get to 4 without it changing over. About there. Yeah, it's good enough. So now I have 3.9 seconds worth of video. Great. Now I'm going to go to slide 2. And I'm going to click on the video. And it's still 8.4 seconds in this particular slide. And what I'm going to do is going to the beginning bar, this purple bar over here. And I am going to drag that so it starts at 4 seconds. So our first slide will take 0 to 3.9 seconds. And our second slide will go from 4 seconds to the very end of the video. And obviously, because we are trying to update the text here and show that it's captions, I'm going to change my text on slide 2. Oh, and I got a bit lucky there. Just gonna, why not? Okay, so I am going to download that video because I would like to have a look. Save file, okay. Now I'm going to open up my file on my computer and just drag it over here so that we can all have a look. And if I press play on this now, you can see that the toast is doing the thing and it switches the caption, but the flow of the video is not interrupted. So the first slide takes from 0 to 3.9. And because I have made sure that I have dragged those bars to be as close to 3.9 and 4 as possible, you cannot see any change in the video. That is how you add captions to a video at the moment. Like I said before, it's a little bit complicated and time consuming, but it's doable. And I'm really looking forward to the way that we're going to be doing it in the future. Let's close that down. So how to include people, well, better include people with intellectual disability and light sensitive seizures. So this one is very, 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 very important. I cannot emphasize how important this is. I cannot also demonstrate this for you, unfortunately. This is one of the few parts of visual design that can actually really, really hurt someone, even kill them. So it's important to know about and keep in mind always. If you are creating any kind of content which uses animation, please make sure that you avoid anything which flickers or flashes at high speed, especially if the flickering or flashing uses contrasting colors. It's estimated that around 3% of people with epilepsy are susceptible to light sensitive seizures. And while that's not a massive amount of people overall, any one single seizure can directly or indirectly kill somebody or injure them. Back in 1997, there was a really very famous episode of Pokemon. It had a sequence where there was a lot of red and blue flashing. Over 600 children were transported to hospital when that episode aired. It's not the only incident of TV causing seizures, but it was definitely the most widespread incident. Either way, even if your content only causes one person to experience a seizure, it's just too many. Even if it doesn't cause them an outright seizure either, it can still make them feel extremely ill. So be very, very careful with flashing. And if you must have animation and flashing and flickering, make it lower contrast using the same tool that we saw before, and make it small in size. So definitely not the entire screen like we've got going now for this slide. This is a bit of a follow-on to keeping flashing to a minimum. It's generally a good idea to keep everything to a minimum unless it serves a good purpose. So animations are fun, and we have a lot of fabulous ones in the Canva library, but they can be very distracting to people with different conditions, especially things like attention deficit disorder. And as a result, it can prevent them from understanding your message altogether because they're just focused on the animation. If you're going to use animation, keep it simple and make sure it's emphasizing a point that you're trying to make and not detracting from it. Likewise, keeping your text simple in terms of like sentence structure is important for people with intellectual disability and learning disorders. Of course, it also benefits your audience who might not speak your language natively as their first language, or other people who might not have a good grasp of advanced language. So children are a really good example here. If you are trying to keep children engaged, you need to keep your text simple. And there's a really fantastic tool that I love to do that. And it's called the Hemingway app. So it's a really good way of keeping your text simple. It makes a lot of different suggestions on how to refine your copy. So on the right-hand side, you can see this is grade 6. Many newspapers actually try to keep their content at around a grade 6 reading level. And grade 6 for people in different countries, it's equivalent to about the reading level of your average 12-year-old. It's a good baseline. If you follow the QR code or the link that Jess has posted in the chat, it'll open Hemingway app up for you. And as you can see from the page title, it's all about making your content bold and clear, which is, again, a running theme of today's session. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some text that might accompany your Instagram video or the image that we've just created in the past. It doesn't have to be original. You might just go and try some existing content you find on the web and see how that looks in Hemingway, but give it a go. Try to simplify your text and follow its suggestions. And I am going to do that now again with you with text that I have grabbed about baked goods from Wikipedia, because baking is the topic of today. And so this is some fabulous historical text. All I need to do is, I'm already on Hemingway. This is just the default page when you open it up. And if you hover over things, it'll tell you, but they're also color coded so I can see the summary in the right-hand side. But I'm just going to remove all of that text, including the title. If it'll let me, there we go. And I'm going to paste my Wikipedia copied text about baked goods. So as you can see, baked goods have been around for thousands of years, and the art of baking was developed early during the Roman Empire. Debatable. But it's also provided a number of suggestions for me. So was developed is using a passive voice. So maybe we could make that active. The Roman Empire developed baking. It was a highly famous art as Roman citizens loved baked goods and demanded them frequently for important occasions such as feasts and weddings. This one's in red, but you can hover over it as well. It says that this sentence is very hard to read. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to break it up into smaller chunks. Maybe it's highlighted the words frequently and highly here because it's got a lot of adverbs. We probably want to reduce the size of that sentence and break it up into 2, and it'll probably be happier with that. It was a highly famous artist. Roman citizens loved baked goods. Citizens demanded them frequently for important occasions such as feasts and weddings. And as you can see, that sentence has now no longer been highlighted as hard to read. So if you do this yourself, you can take anything that you have written, past, present, or future, and just make it a little bit easier. Now, again, the text that I've copied, it says grade 10, okay, aim for 9. I would say aim for 6. So as an occupation, it might be employment or some simpler word. I am personally actually very terrible at finding the simpler words, especially on the spot like right now. So I'm not going to bother trying any further. That's what we wanted you to do. I forgot to put that slide up for you, but hopefully you've all had a go at that, or if you're rewatching the video, you're going to do that. But I just wanted to review what we've done today. So what we've done today is we have gone through the activities. We have made our text visually more accessible on a static image. We have learned how to make captions more accessible and how to actually caption videos. And we have also learned how to make text more understandable generally. So at the end of this, you should have a simple image Instagram post with improved text accessibility, an Instagram video with a little bit of time text, and some text to accompany those items in a description. And that's a really good day of social media content for a business if your bakery were a real place. In terms of the topics we have covered, these are how I would boil it down into some simple dot points. If there's one word I want you to remember from all of this, it's the word simple. It's natural to want to pack in as much information as you can for your audience, spend a lot of time making it sparkle and shine and look really beautiful. I don't want to discourage any of that either. It's still important. Design is a lot of fun, and so is experimenting with all the amazing tools at Canva. But at the end of the day, design is about communication. And if your audience doesn't hear the message you want to send, it might not be the best design. So remember, keep it simple, and you'll be doing lots of people a favor with or without disability and creating more effective designs in the process. But I would actually be super keen to hear from all of you as well. What did you learn about accessibility or disability? Or what have you heard today that might make you make some different decisions in the future if you've already been designing? Have you learned anything today that you didn't have any idea about before? I would love to hear any and all of that in the chat. And if there are any questions from the last ones, that'd probably be a really good time to deal with those too.
Okay, you mean Yomna has a question. What size fonts are mostly used in flyers? Ooh. Do you know? Yeah.
I don't off the top of my head. I can tell you that for websites, the minimum font size that you want to be going for is 14 pixels. If you're doing print, it depends on what font you're using, because like I said earlier, different fonts measure themselves differently. So 24 points in one font might be huge and it might be tiny in another one. What I would recommend, because I couldn't give you a good number and what unit it's in, test it out. Print out a flyer or two and have a look at what your audience says, because your audience might be everybody on earth, but if your audience is, for example, an older demographic, you're going to want to be printing it bigger. So test. There's lots of resources that you can do that with.
Fantastic. Michelle says the San Francisco Public Library is excited to implement these tips and tools in how we communicate with our patrons and advertise and share our programming.
I'm so excited that the San Francisco Public Library is implementing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited that you're even here today. So
it's great to have you live on the call. So I think that's it for questions. Oh, quick question, comms team. We usually use Calibri font. Someone told me that in Canva, Carlito and Lato are the most similar to this. Are they both considered easily accessible too, Carlito and Lato? Well, I guess as long as they're sans serif, I don't know whether you have specific font knowledge, Nissa, but as long as they're sans serif fonts.
Sans serif is good. I mean, look, you can use serif as well. I don't want to tell people to never use serif, because there is definitely a time and place for it. Whether it is accessible depends on the content that you are printing. So like I said before, if you are choosing text, if you are only having the words 10 in numerals and percent on your information, maybe it could be confused with IO% or something. You want to test out different fonts for yourself and see how readable they are. The better fonts for people who live with dyslexia are usually ones where the letter forms themselves are very different from one to another. And we don't have this one in our library, I'm afraid, but one of the best fonts I've heard for dyslexic people is Comic Sans, because each letter is so different. Again, test it out, use your best judgment, and ask around. That's all I can really tell you on that. I wanted to wrap up by putting a challenge out to all of you. So anything that you have learned today, just make and share something using any one of the strategies or all of the strategies, or, just put into practice what you've learned so that it sticks just that little bit better. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I have really, really enjoyed giving this talk and seeing your feedback. It's been really fabulous. So thank you so much.
And we hope to see you at another Canva Space event very soon. Take care.
Thank you.